This study of Heinrich Himmler completes the trilogy of biographies we have written about Hitler's principal assistants in the establishment and control of the Third Reich. The general desire to understand the exact nature of this regime and of the individuals who created it has become more pressing during the past few years, now that both Germany and the world outside have to a great extent overcome the shock to our common humanity inflicted by the Nazis, which either paralyzed or inhibited clear thinking during and immediately after the war. While the Germans have had to come to terms with themselves as the society which enabled Hitler to win control of the state and to establish a modern form of tyranny that eventually covered almost the whole of Europe, the other European powers and the United States have also had to search their consciences in order to discover to what degree they connived at the consolidation of Hitler's rule. Our aim in writing these biographies, as well as our other book, The July Plot, which examines the German resistance movement in its weaknesses as well as in its strength, has been to discover as much as we could of the real nature of the men who helped to create Nazism and to examine all the facts known about them. We are opposed to the sensational kind of interpretation which classes Hitler, Goring, Goebbels, and Himmler simply as monsters, a term used largely by the popular press to separate these much-hated men from ourselves and so comfort their readers. But the fact remains that these monsters and their colleagues were for a considerable while circulating freely in both German and European society. They were liked or disliked, despised or feared, accepted socially or avoided in just the same way as other politicians, diplomats, and soldiers. The Nazi leaders cannot be voided from human society simply because it is pleasanter or more convenient to regard them now as outside the pale of humanity. The thousands of men and women who worked with them were for the most part their admirers or their willing colleagues, while the influential Europeans and Americans who either actively favored them or else tolerated them as a rather grim necessity in European politics who should not be opposed by any show of force, are not so far removed from those who actively cheered them in the streets. The Nazi Party, as Alan Bullock has pointed out in his admirable biography of Hitler, had no political philosophy. Their attitude to power was solely that it was something to be won by any means that could be improvised, irrespective of the moral issues involved. It was Hitler's utter unscrupulousness in handling the political leaders of other countries that preyed on their weakness and took a contemptuous advantage of their traditional sense of values in diplomacy. This lack of scruple is by no means uncommon in many human activities. Indeed, his unscrupulous brilliance was the very aspect of Hitler's character that excited widespread popular admiration and sympathy between 1933 and 1938, both inside and outside Germany. The nature of the regime and of the public reaction to it sprang directly from the characters of the men who created it. Though this is in a sense true of all regimes, none in recent history has been so hastily and casually constructed as Hitler's Third Reich. Both policy and administration were largely concocted as a result of the individual whims of the various leaders and of intuitive decisions taken at random in response to the mood of the moment or an urgent need to outsmart some opponent. The sufferings of the German people, and those they were led to inflict on others 20 years ago, were largely the result of the personal psychology of Hitler and of the three men whose lives we have attempted to reconstruct and interpret. In each case, we have tried to approach the task of writing these biographies with as little prejudice as possible. We have described in turn the development of Goebbels, Goring, and Himmler through their childhood and adolescence. We have shown how they came to join the Nazi Party and discussed the particular contribution they made to it during its early formative period. There could scarcely have been three more different men than these in temperament and social background, nor could the particular parts they played in supporting Hitler during the years of his power have been more divergent.